Alright, here we go. Fingers crossed that it works this time. I've tried restarting the stream. This is the 4th time. And it's failed. It failed every single time before this, but I think we're live now. So, in the meantime, I'll just say one of the things that I did say during the few times I thought maybe it was back up live and then it crapped out on me again, is that the 2016 debates between Trump and Clinton I think were a lot more interesting, to be honest. And I think the big part of it is because they discussed a wider range of issues, because in these debates it's always like the same 4 issues. It's basically like, I was talking about COVID, they're talking about healthcare, they're talking about election interference or election integrity, or they're talking about some form of like the race issue or law and order and stuff like that. And then occasionally they'll throw in something about climate change or foreign policy or the economy or something like that. But I mean, a lot of the some other issues that were issues back in 2016, to be honest, really don't seem to be issues anymore. But anyway, so we're now about 20 minutes behind, but
and I am very
we're
proud
into
of my
about the
plan.
last
It's gotten
half hour
endorsed
of the
by
debate.
all the major labor unions as
So
well
I rewound it
as
a
well
bit
as a
from
whole
where I know
range
it
of other
cut
people
off.
who in fact are concerned in the medical field. This is something that's going to save people's lives, and this is going to give some people an opportunity to have health care for their children. How many of you home are worried and rolling around in bed tonight wondering what in God's name you're going to do if you get sick? Because you've lost your home insurance, your health insurance, your company's gone under.
I think that's where I was at, but whatever,
We
we'll play
have
it
to
from
provide
here.
health insurance for people at an affordable rate, and that's what I do.
President Trump,
Excuse me, he was
your
there
response.
for 47 years. He didn't do it. He was now there as vice president for 8 years, and it's not like it was 25 years ago. It was 3 3/4.
Wait,
it was just
we were
a little
ways
while
past
ago,
it, I
right?
thought.
Less than 4 years.
Period. And the Biden care proposal will, in fact, provide for that affordable health care, lower premiums. What we're going to do is going to cost some money. It's going to cost over $750 billion over 10 years to do it. And they're going to have lower premiums. You can buy into the better plans, the cheaper plans, lower your premiums, deal with unexpected billing, and have your drug prices drop significantly. He keeps talking about it. He hasn't done a thing for anybody on health care. Not a thing.
Tristan, when
Very
he
quickly,
says,
then I want to talk
when
about
he
what's
says
happening on
public
Capitol
option,
Hill.
he's talking about socialized medicine, and when he and healthcare. When he talks about
Have to go to another
security
question.
years ago, go back and look at the records. He tried to hurt Social Security years ago.
All
One
right,
thing,
let's.
because of her. Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to approve anything because she'd love to have some victories on a date called November 3rd. Nancy Pelosi does not
I
want to
don't think
approve
I heard him
it. We
say
are
this, so
ready,
whatever,
willing,
we'll
and
just-
able
we'll
to do
just go from
something.
here.
Don't forget, we've already approved 3 plans, and it's gone through, including the Democrats, in all fairness. This one she doesn't want. It's near the election because she thinks it helps her politically. I think it hurts her politically.
All right, Mr. Vice President,
You know, the Republican leader in the United States Senate said he can't pass it. He will not be able to pass it. He does not have Republican votes. Why isn't he talking to his Republican friends?
let me follow up with you, Vice President
we made a
Biden,
deal, the
because let
Republicans
me
will
ask
pass it.
Vice President Biden a question. You are the leader of the Democratic Party. Why have you not pushed the Democrats to get a deal for the American people?
Well, I have, and they have pushed it. Look, they passed this act all the way back in the beginning of the summer. This is like it's not new. It's been out there. This HEROES Act has been sitting there. And look at what's happening. When I was in charge of the Recovery Act with $800
Biden's
billion,
getting angry.
I was able to get $145 billion to local communities that have to balance their budgets and states that have to balance their budgets, so then have to fire firefighters, teachers, first responders, law enforcement officers, so they can keep their cities and counties running. He will not support that. They have not done a thing for them. And Mitch McConnell said, let them go bankrupt. Let them go bankrupt. Come on. What's the matter
The
with
bill
these
that was
guys?
passed in the House was a bailout of badly run, high crime, Democrat, all run by Democrats, cities and states. It was a way of getting a lot of money, billions and billions of dollars to these states. It was also a way of getting a lot of money from our people's pockets to people that come into our country illegally. we were going to take care of everything for them. And what that does, and I'd love to do that, I'd love to help them, but what that does, everybody all over the world will start pouring into our country. We can't do it. This was a way of taking care of them. This was a way of spending on things that had nothing to do with COVID, as per your question. But it was really a big bailout for badly run Democrat cities and states.
All right,
By the way,
I want
if
to.
I get elected, I'm running as a proud Democrat, but I'm going to be an American president. I don't see red states and blue states. What I see is American, United States. And folks, every single state out there finds themselves in trouble. They're going to start laying off, whether they're red or blue, cops, firefighters, first responders, because teachers, because they have to balance their budget. And the founders were smart. They allowed the federal government to deficit spend to compensate for the United States of America.
I want to talk about the minimum wage, gentlemen. Mr. Vice President, we are talking a lot about struggling small businesses and business owners these days. Do you think this is the right time to ask them to raise the minimum wage? You, of course, support a $15 federal minimum wage.
I do, because I think one of the things we're going to have to do is we're going to have to bail them out, too. We should be bailing them out now, those small businesses. You got 1 in 6 of them going under. They're not going to be able to make it back. They passed a package that allows us to be able to call PPP. Money is supposed to go to help them do everything from organize how they can deal with their businesses being open safely. Schools, how they can make classrooms smaller, how they can hire more teachers, how they can put ventilation systems in. They need the help. The businesses as well as the schools need the help. But these guys will not help them. Is not giving them any of the money.
We are going to move on to immigration,
one thing very
but I
quickly,
want
he
to get
said we
your
have to help our
reaction.
small businesses.
I wonder if there was a
by
question I
raising
missed.
the minimum wage. That's not helping. I think it should be a state
true.
option.
Well,
Alabama
but
is
I don't
different
think
than
he was
New
necessarily
York.
advocating for
New
that. He was
York
just
is different from
talking about a lot of
Vermont.
different things.
Every state is different. It should be a state option.
You said very
we have
recently.
to help. It's very important. We have to help our small businesses.
You
How
said-
are you helping your small businesses when you're forcing wages? What's going to happen, and what's been proven to happen, is when you do that, these small businesses fire many
to
of
cut
their
it,
employees.
You said very
Not true,
recently you would
by the way.
consider raising the federal minimum
it.
wage to $15
Say
an
it.
hour. You said recently you would consider raising the federal minimum wage to
What I
$15 an hour.
really
Is that
like,
still the case?
And I would consider it to an extent, but
In a
what I
second
really like,
administration?
in a second administration, but not to a level that's going to put all these businesses out of business. It should be a state option. Look, I've lived in different places. I know different places. They're all different. Some places, $15 is not so bad. In other places, other states, $15 would be
Okay, President
ruinous.
Trump, thank you. Quick
No
response,
one
Vice
should
President
work
Biden.
2 jobs, 1 job, be below poverty. People are making $6, $7, $8 an
Okay,
hour.
yeah, we'll
These first
do a
responders,
better
we all
job.
clap for as they come down the street because they've allowed us to make it. What's happening? They deserve a minimum wage of $15. Anything below that
First
puts you below the
responders,
poverty level.
I
And
have
there
a
is
hard
no
time
evidence
believing
that
any
when you
first
raise the
responders get paid minimum wage.
Businesses go
That's-
out of
that's
business.
most
That
of
is
that, like,
simply not true.
That's probably
We're gonna talk about
almost
immigration.
double
We're
minimum
going
wage
to talk
in a lot
about
of
immigration
cases.
now,
Or,
gentlemen.
well, maybe not,
and
like
we're
at
going to
least
talk about families
150%,
within this
probably.
context. Mr. President, your administration separated children from their parents at the border, at least 4,000 kids. You've since reversed your zero-tolerance policy, but the United States can't locate the parents of more than 500
Honestly, I'm not
children.
talking about immigration,
So
but this
how
isn't
will
really a
these
hot
families
button
ever
issue,
be
so-
reunited?
Children
The hot button
brought
issues are the
here
issues that are
by coyotes and lots of bad
boring
people,
or talked about too
cartels,
much at the moment. Which
and they're
is-
brought here, and they used to use them to get into our country. We now have as strong a border as we've ever had. We're over 400 miles of brand new wall.
Say boring,
You see
it's
the
usually
numbers,
not
and
even
we let
quite as
people in,
important
but they
as
have to
you want.
come in legally, and they come in through
But
merit.
how will you reunite
let
the
me
this
just
kids
say-
isn't
with
the
their
big issue
families,
right now.
Mr.
They
President?
far as I'm
built
aware.
cages. You know, they
That's
used to
probably just the way
say,
the
I
media-
built the
what media
cages.
talks
And
about.
then they had a picture in a certain newspaper. And it was a picture of these horrible cages. And they said, look at these cages. President Trump built them. And then it was determined they were built in 2014. That was him.
Do you
They
have a
built
plan to
cages.
reunite the kids
Yes,
with
we're
their
working on
families?
it we're trying very hard. But a lot of these kids come out without the parents. They come over through cartels and through coyotes and through gangs.
Vice President Biden, let me bring you into this
525
conversation. Quick response and then another question to you.
These 500 plus kids came with parents. They separated them at the border to make it a disincentive to come to begin with. Real tough. We're really strong. And guess what? They cannot, it's not coyotes didn't bring them over. Their parents were with them. They got separated from their parents. And it makes us a laughing stock and violates every notion of who we are as a nation.
Let me ask you a follow-up
Kristen,
question.
they did it. We changed the policy.
Your response
they
to that?
They did it. We changed.
did not
They built the
separate
cages.
They,
Who built the cages, Joe?
let's talk about what
Who
we're
built the
talking about.
cages,
Let's
Joe?
talk about what we're talking about. What happened?
But did
Parents
they
were
actually separate
ripped,
that?
their
I
kids
know
were
they've
ripped from
been
their arms
separated
and separated.
during the Obama administration. They were
And now
separated
they
both
cannot find over 500
administrations.
sets of those parents, and those kids are alone. Nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. It's criminal. It's criminal.
Let me ask
Kristen,
you
I will
about
say this.
immigration.
They
10
went down.
seconds,
We
and then
brought
I need to ask
reporters,
you.
everything. They are so well taken care of. They're in facilities that were so clean.
But some
and
of
have
them
gotten
haven't been
such
reunited
But
with their
just ask
families.
one question. Who built the cages? I'd love you to ask him that. Who built the cages?
Let me ask about your immigration policy, Mr. Vice President. The Obama administration did fail to deliver immigration reform, which had been a key promise during the administration. It also presided over record deportations as well as family detentions at the border before changing course. So why should voters trust you with an immigration overhaul now?
Because we made a mistake. It took too long to get it right. It took too long to get it right.
Okay, now
I'll
how
be
is he gonna
president of
get
the
it
United
right now?
States, not vice president of the United States. And the fact is, I've made it very clear. Within 100 days, I'm going to send to the United States Congress a pathway to citizenship for over 11 million undocumented people. And all of those so-called dreamers, those DACA kids, they're going to be immediately certified again to be able to stay in this country and put on a path to citizenship. The idea that they are being sent home by this guy and they want to do that is they've gone to a country they've never seen before. I can imagine you're 5 years old, your parents are taking you across the Rio Grande River and it's illegal. And you say, oh no, Mom, leave me here. I'm not going to go with you. They've been here. Many of them are model citizens. Over 20,000 of them are first responders out there taking care of people during this crisis.
See, in that case,
We
like
owe
basically
them.
my
We
position
owe
is like,
them.
what's already been done is done. But
President
like,
Trump,
He
Mr.
had
change the
8
policy going
years
forward.
to do what he said he was going to do. And I've changed
We did.
without having a specific. We got rid of catch and release. We got rid of a lot of horrible things that they put in and that they lived with. But he had
Basically what I was
8
saying is
years he was vice president. He
The
did
the
nothing
DACA
except build
kids
cages to keep
stayed,
children
but
in.
the rest.
Vice President
wrong.
Biden, your response.
It's not
Catch and
necessarily to
release.
keep
You know what he's
children,
talking about
exactly.
there? If in fact you had a family came across and they were arrested, they in fact were given a date to show up for their hearing. They were released. And guess what? They showed up for a hearing. And this is the first president in the history of the United States of America that anybody seeking asylum has to do it in another country. That's never happened before in America. That's never happened before in America. You come to the United States and you make your case that I seek asylum based on the following premise, why I deserve it under American law. They're sitting in squalor on the other side of the river.
President Trump, your response,
So
30
important.
seconds, and then we'll move
It
on.
just shows that he has no understanding of immigration or the laws. Catch and release is a disaster. A murderer would come in, a rapist would come in, a very bad person would come in. We would take their name. We have to release them into our country. And then you say they come back. Less than 1% of the people come back. We have to send ICE out and Border Patrol out to find them. We would say, come back in 2 years, 3 years. We're going to give you a court case. You need Perry Mason. We're going to give you a court case. When you say they come back, they don't come back, Joe.
Yeah.
They never come back. Only the really, I hate to say this, but those with the lowest IQ, they might come back.
Okay,
But they're
President
very,
Trump, let's
very
give
few.
Vice President Biden a chance to respond, and then we're going to move on to the
You
next
don't know
section.
the law, Joe.
Vice President Biden, your response.
Kind
know
of
the
a
law,
funny
what he's
thing.
telling you is simply not true.
Well, check it out. They don't come back.
Check it out.
All right, let's move on
But we don't have to
the
worry
next
about it because they
section.
terminated it, so we don't have to worry about
Let's
it
move
anymore.
on
Right,
to
so,
the
yeah,
next
very high. I don't know
section.
if it's quite
525
only
kids not
1%,
knowing
but
where
like
in God's name
very
they're gonna
large
be and
percent.
lost their parents.
Go ahead.
All right, let's talk about our next section.
Child
which is
separation
race
issue, though,
in
that's
America.
one that definitely
And I want to talk about the way Black and Brown Americans
kind of
experience race
takes
in this
hold of
country.
your emotions a bit.
Part of that experience is
You really
something
feel for them. It's
called
like put
the
yourself in
talk.
their shoes. It's like,
It
man, it's
happens regardless of class and income.
difficult to imagine.
Parents who feel they have no choice but to prepare their children for the chance that they could be
you can't imagine,
targeted,
you realize it's
including by the
very bad.
police, for no reason other than the color of their
All right,
skin.
here we go.
Mr.
Race
Vice
issue now.
President, in the next 2
Policing.
minutes, I want you to speak directly to these families. Do you understand why these parents fear for their children?
I do.
Oh,
I do. You
Okay,
my
now-
daughter
now
is a
this-
social
this
worker,
question is-
And She's written a lot about this. Has a graduate degree from the University of
I mean,
Pennsylvania.
I guess they're gonna maybe offer the same question to Trump, but like.
One of the reasons why I ended up working
I'd rather
on the east
hear
side
them
of
talk about
Wilmington,
policy
Delaware,
than like, oh, our sympathies are with.
Was to learn more
of course,
about
that's just
what
me.
was going on. What
I know a lot of
I
people
never
don't
had to tell my daughter
get into the nitty gritty
she's
and
pulled
vote
over,
based on policy.
make
A
sure
lot
she
of it's
puts
based on
for a traffic stop,
how the politician
put both
relates
hands
to them
on
as a
top of
voter.
the wheel, and don't reach for the glove box because someone may shoot you. But a black parent, no matter how wealthy or how poor they are, has to teach their child when you're walking down the street, don't have a hoodie on when you go across the street, making sure that you, in fact, if you get pulled over, yes sir, no sir, hands on top of the wheel, because you are in fact the victim, whether you're a person making child of a $300,000 a year person or someone who's on food stamps. The fact of the matter is there is institutional racism in America. And we have always said, we've never lived up to it, that we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women are created equal. But guess what? We have never, ever lived up to it. But we've always constantly been moving the needle further and further to inclusion, not exclusion. This is the first president to come along and says, that's the end of that. We're not going to do that anymore. We have to provide for economic opportunity, better education,
like
better health care, better
place.
access to schooling, better access to opportunity to borrow money to start businesses. All the things we can do, and I've laid out a clear plan as to how to do those things, just to give people a shot. It's about accumulating the ability to have wealth as well as it is to be free from violence.
President Trump, same question to you, and let me remind you
at least
of the
Biden
question.
didn't
I would
claim
like you to speak
systemic
directly
racism
to
right
these
there.
families. Do you understand why these
we know he
parents
has,
vote for their children?
but
Yes,
like,
I do.
at least didn't
And again, he's been in government
because like
47
the way he explained,
years.
he's like
never
he
did
did
a thing
acknowledge we are
except in
moving closer to
1994, when he did
being more
such
inclusive of
harm
them
to the black community,
living
and they
up to
were
our
called,
values.
and he called them super predators, and he said that, super predators, and they kept never lived that down. 1994, your crime bill, the super predators. Nobody has done more for the black community than Donald Trump. And if you look, with the exception of Abraham Lincoln, possible exception, but the exception of Abraham Lincoln,
I do like
nobody has
it's funny
done
how he adds
what I've
possible
done.
exceptions. Like,
Criminal
yeah,
justice
I
reform.
think it would be with
Obama
the exception. He has
and
said straight
Joe
up with the
didn't do
exception
it.
before, though.
I don't even think they tried because they had no chance at doing it. They might have wanted to do it, but if you had to see the arms I had to twist to get that done, it was not a pretty picture. And everybody knows it, including some very liberal people that cried in my office. They cried in the Oval Office. 2 weeks later, they're out saying, gee, we have to defeat him. Criminal justice reform, prison reform, opportunity zones with Tim Scott, a great senator from South Carolina. He came in with this incredible idea for opportunity zones. It's one of the most successful programs. People don't talk about it. Tremendous investment is being made. Biggest beneficiary, the black and Hispanic communities. And then historically black colleges and universities. I might have heard it mentioned once. After 3 years of coming to the office, I love some of those guys. They were great. They came into the office and they said, I said, what are you doing? After 3 years, I said, why do you keep coming back? Because we have no funding. I said, you don't have to come back every year. We have to come back because President Obama would never give them long-term funding, and I did. 10-year long-term funding, and I gave them more money than they asked for because they said, I think you need more. And I said, the only bad part about this is I may never see you again because I got very friendly with them, and they like me and I like them, but I saved it. Colleges and universities.
Okay, and we're going to talk about both of your records, but your response to that.
Hot mic
My response to that is I never, ever said what he accused me of saying. The fact of the matter is, in 2000, though, after the crime bill had been in the law for a while, this is the guy who said, the problem with the crime bill, there's not enough people in jail. There's not enough people in jail. And go on my website, get the quote, the date when he said it. Not enough people. He talked about marauding gangs, young gangs, and the people who are going to maraud our cities. This is a guy who in the Central Park five innocent black kids, he continued to push for making sure that they got the death penalty. None of them were guilty of the crimes they were suggested. Look, and talk about granted, he did in fact let 20 people, he commuted 20 people's sentences. We commuted over 1,000 people's sentences. Over 1,000. The very law he's talking about is a law that, in fact, initiated by Barack Obama. And secondly, we're in a situation here where the federal prison system was reduced by 38,000 people under our administration. And one of these things we should be doing, there should be no minimum mandatories in the law. That's why I'm offering $20 billion to states to change their state laws to eliminate minimum mandatories and set up drug courts. No one should be going to jail because they have a drug problem. They should be going to rehabilitation, not to jail. We should fundamentally change the system, and that's what I'm going to do.
But why didn't
if they're a
you
drug
do
dealer,
it
they
4
should go
years
to jail.
ago?
But if they're
Why didn't you do that 4 years ago? Even less than that. Why didn't you?
I
do it?
am
You were
not
vice president. You keep talking about all these things you're going to do, and you're going to do this. But you were there just a short time ago, and you guys did nothing.
We did.
You know, Joe,
of course, it needs to be a
ran
rehab
because
facility
of you.
where they're kind of like
I ran because of Barack Obama. Because
actually
you did a poor job. If I thought you
in
did a good job,
residence
I
there.
would have never run. I would have never run. I ran because of you. I'm looking at you now. You're a
or at least
politician.
put
I
in some
ran
sort
because
of a
you.
All right, Vice President
position where
Biden
they're around
responds to that,
other
and then I
people
do
who are
have some
not
questions
drug
for
addicts,
both of you.
because
Well, I tell you what,
you don't want them to be around a bunch of other drug addicts.
Because what's happening here is, you know who I am, you know who he is, you know his character, you know my character, you know our reputations for honor and telling the truth. I am anxious to have this race. I am anxious to see this take place. The character of the country is on the ballot. Our character is on the ballot. Look at us closely.
Let me ask some follow-up.
Excuse me.
Please respond,
If
and then we're
this
going to have
stuff
follow-up.
is
Things I agree with Ben
about
Shapiro's
Russia,
analysis, like
Ukraine,
whatever Trump's
China,
done to the
other
office of the
countries,
president,
Iraq, if
his,
this is true,
the bad
then
aspects
he's
of
a
his
corrupt
character,
politician.
then
So
he's
don't
already
give
done the
me
damage.
The stuff about how you're this innocent baby. Joe, they're
I do
calling
think
you a corrupt
Biden
politician.
probably has better
Nobody-
character
President
than
Trump, I
Trump.
want to
From
stay
hell.
on the issue of race. We're
Take a
talking
look at
about the issue.
laptop from hell.
President
In
Trump,
terms
of
we're talking about race
policy,
right now, and
I
I
think
do
Trump
want to
will-
stay
Trump
on
will
the
pass
issue of race.
better
President
policy.
Trump,
And I
you've
have to
just
respond to that.
Please,
Because look,
very
there
quickly.
are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plant. They have said that this has all the five former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. Nobody believes it except his and his good friend Rudy Giuliani.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
And
You
that's
gotta be-
exactly what.
Is this
that's
where you're
exactly
going?
what.
This
was
is
told.
where he's going. The laptop is Russia,
Yes.
Gentlemen,
Russia.
I want to stay on the issue of race.
You
okay?
have to be kidding. Here we
Mr.
go
President,
again with Russia.
We're going to continue on the issue of race. Mr. President,
believe
you've
that one.
described the Black Lives Matter movement as a symbol of hate. You've shared a video of a man chanting white power to millions of your supporters. You've said that black professional athletes exercising their First Amendment rights should be fired. What do you say to Americans who say that kind of language from a president is contributing to a climate of hate?
When has he said that?
Well,
Or has he
the
actually
first
said
time
that?
I ever heard of Black Lives Matter, they were chanting pigs in a blanket, talking
he's
about
talking about
police.
black-
Pigs, talking about our police. Pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. I said, that's a horrible thing. And they were marching down the street. And that was my first glimpse of Black Lives Matter. I thought it was a terrible thing. As far as my relationships with all people, I think I have great relationships with all people. I am the least racist person in this room.
Well, what do you say to Americans who are concerned by that rhetoric?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know
video?
what to say. I got criminal justice reform done and prison reform and opportunity zones. I took care of black colleges and universities. I don't know what to say. They can say anything. I mean, they can say anything. It makes me sad because I am the least racist person. I can't even see the audience because it's so dark. But I don't care who's in the audience. I'm the least racist person in this room.
Okay, Vice President Biden, let me ask you very quickly, and then I have a follow-up question for you.
Abraham Lincoln here is one of the most racist presidents we've had in modern history. He pours fuel on every single racist fire.
What?
Every single one. Started off his
He
campaign
called him
coming down the
Abraham
escalator
Lincoln.
saying he's getting
I wonder
rid of
what he
those
was- I wonder what he
Mexican
was
rapists.
thinking.
He's banned Muslims because they're Muslims. He has moved around and made everything worse across the board. He says about the poor boys. Last time we were on stage here, he said, I told them to stand down
now Biden's
and
making a
stand
bunch
ready.
of
Come on. This guy
mistakes
is
now.
a dog whistle about as big as a foghorn.
President Trump, I'm going to give you 10 seconds to respond, and then I have a
No,
follow-up.
he made a reference to Abraham Lincoln. Where did that come in? I mean,
You said
where
you're
did that-
Abraham Lincoln.
No, where did that?
Oh, he was-
no,
okay, so
no.
he was
I
using
said
that,
not since
ironically.
Abraham Lincoln has anybody done what I've done for the black
Yeah,
community.
so he
I
was
didn't
basically
say
just
I'm
saying,
Abraham
calling him,
Lincoln.
oh,
I
hey,
said,
you're an
not
Abraham,
since
Abraham Lincoln over here,
has
you know.
anybody done
He's being
what I've done for the black
facetious.
community.
I
Now,
couldn't tell
you
that. I wasn't
have done
sure. I was like,
nothing
either
other
he's
than
being
the crime
facetious
bill,
or he accidentally
which
called
put
him Abraham Lincoln because
tens of
thinking about something else.
thousands of black men mostly in jail.
All right, let me-
and you know
let me
what?
a- let me
they
ask
remember
Vice
it because
President
if you
Biden
look
a
at what's
question.
happening with the voting right now,
Let me ask
they
Vice
remember
President
that
Biden
you treated them
about-
very, very badly.
the-
Just take a look at what's happening out there.
Vice President Biden, let me give you a chance to respond within this context. Crime
Okay.
bills that you supported in the 80s and 90s contributed to the incarceration of tens of thousands of young black men who had small amounts of drugs in their possession. They are sons, they are brothers, they're fathers, they're uncles, whose families are still to this day, some of them suffering the consequences. So speak to those families. Why should they vote for you?
One of the things is that in the 80s, we passed 100%, all 100 senators voted for it, a bill on drugs and how to deal with drugs. It was a mistake. I've been trying to change the since then, particularly the portion on cocaine. That's why I've been arguing that, in fact, we should not send anyone to jail for a pure drug offense. They should be going into treatment across the board. That's what we should be spending money on.
This is
That's
the
why I
thing, like,
set
I
up
agree,
drug
Biden
courts, which
made
are
a
never
mistake, but,
funded
like, I
by
do
Republican
believe
friends.
in
They should not be
forgiveness.
going
Like, I'm
to
not a
jail
fan of
for
cancel
a
culture.
drug
Cancel
or an
culture's
alcohol
terrible,
problem.
so, I mean-
They should be going into treatment. That's what we've been
But
trying to do. That's what I'm going to get
it's
done.
not up to me
because
to
I think
determine
the
whether or
American
not
people
Biden
have
can
now seen that, in fact, it
be
was a
forgiven for
mistake
this. It's up to the
pass
people
those
who
laws
are
relating to
affected
drugs.
by it.
But they were not in the crime
or
bill.
whose families
But
are
why
affected by
didn't he
it.
get it done? See, it's all talk, no action with these politicians. Why didn't he get it done? That's
mean,
what
the
I'm
thing
gonna
you gotta
do
say is,
when
like,
I
there's only
become
so much
president.
you can do as
You were
president,
vice
too.
president along with
You have a
Obama
lot
as
of
your
sway,
president,
but
your
even
leader,
as
for 8
vice
years.
president,
Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years to
should
get it
do a
done.
lot
Now
as
you're
well.
saying you're going to get it done because you're all talk and no action, Jim.
We got a
Your
lot of it
response.
done. We released
get
38,000. We
anything
got
done.
38,000 prisoners left from the.
You got nothing done.
38,000 prisoners were released from federal prison. There were over 1,000 people who were given clemency. In fact, we're the ones that put in the legislation saying we could look at pattern and practice of police departments and what they were doing, how they were conducting themselves. I could go on, but we began the process. We lost an election. That's why I'm running to win back that election and change his terrible policy.
I
Quick
just
response,
asked,
and then we're
I
gonna
just
move
asked
on
one
to climate
question.
change.
Why didn't you do it in the 8 years, a short time ago? Why didn't you do it? You just said, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. You put tens
Because-
of thousands of mostly black young men in prison. Now you're saying you're going to undo that. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years with Obama. You know why,
Because-
Joe? Because you're all talk and no action.
All right, Vice President
Because
Biden, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
We had a Republican Congress. That's the answer.
Well,
Okay.
You got to talk them into it, Joe.
All right.
You got to talk them into it.
Gotta
We're going to
talk
move
them
on to our next section,
Like I
which
did
is
with criminal
climate
justice
change.
reform. I had
Okay.
to talk Democrats
Well-
into it.
Gentlemen,
You did what we
we're running out of
already done.
time, so we got to get on to
Okay.
climate change.
I would
please.
think that what
You both
Biden's
have very
proposing is
different
something
visions
that,
on climate change. President
a lot of
Trump, you say
Republicans
that
are being
environmental
supportive.
regulations have hurt jobs in the energy
But
sector,
like,
but
as far as like releasing number of people from prison and all that, so I don't know. I was gonna mention this a while ago, but I wrote this down too. I just say I wish I would have kept up on politics more in the last few months because like I've really let it go by the wayside ever since like sometime in beginning of June, and so I'm not really in the loop on a lot of this stuff.
Vice
So I can't
President
really
Biden,
comment
you
on it
have
the way I
said
would
you
want
see
to. And there's a
addressing
lot of
climate change
accusations
as
we've both
an
been making that I'm
opportunity to create new jobs. For each of you, how would you
I don't
both
know, I just
combat climate change and support
I don't
job
know if
growth
they're
at the
true.
same
I'm not
time, starting
familiar with
you,
some of the stuff
President Trump?
they're
You have 2
referencing.
minutes uninterrupted.
So we have the Trillion Trees program. We have so many different programs. I do love the environment, but what I
These
want
are
is the cleanest,
environmentalists.
crystal clear water, the cleanest air. We have the best, lowest number in carbon emissions, which is a big standard that I notice Obama goes
right, so
with
we got
all
about
the
15
time.
minutes left.
Not Joe. I haven't heard Joe use the term because I'm not sure he knows what it represents or means, but I have heard Obama use it. And we have the best carbon emission numbers that we've had in 35 years under this administration. We are working so well with industry, but here's what we can't do. Look at China, how filthy it is. Look at Russia. Look at India. It's filthy. The air is filthy. The Paris Accord, I took us out because we were going to have to spend trillions of dollars, and we were treated very unfairly. When they put us in there, they did us a great disservice. They were going to take away our businesses. I will not sacrifice tens of millions of jobs, thousands and thousands of companies because of the Paris Accord. It was so unfair. China doesn't kick in until 2030. Russia goes back to a low standard, and we kicked in right away. It would have destroyed our businesses. So, you ready? We have done an incredible job environmentally. We have the cleanest air, the cleanest water, and the best carbon emission standards that we've seen in many, many years.
Vice President
And we
Biden.
haven't destroyed our industries.
Vice President Biden, 2 minutes to you, uninterrupted.
Climate change, climate warming, global warming is an existential threat to humanity. We have a moral obligation to deal with it. And we're told by all the leading scientists in the world, we don't have much time. We're going to pass the point of no return the next 8 to 10 years. 4 more years of this man eliminating all the regulations that were put in by us to clean up the climate, to limit limit emissions, will put us in a position where we're going to be in real trouble. Here's where we have a great opportunity.
I would also say
I was able to get both
like
all the
Elon Musk
environmental organizations as well as
Tesla,
labor. People
I wouldn't
worried
be
about
surprised
jobs
if electric
to
cars take
support
over
my
within the
climate
next
plan.
10
Because
years.
what it does, it will create
They'll be
millions of new
become
good-paying
affordable and
jobs.
people will be
We're going to invest in, for example,
buying them quite frequently.
50,000 charging stations on our highways so that we can own the electric car market of the future. In the meantime, China is doing that. We're going to be in a position where we're going to see to it that we're going to take 4 million existing buildings and 2 million existing homes and retrofit them so they don't leak as much energy, saving hundreds of millions of barrels of oil in the process and creating significant number of jobs. And by the way, the whole idea of what this is all going to do, it's going to create millions of jobs, and it's going to clean the environment. Our health and our jobs are at stake. That's what's happening. And what right now, by the way, Wall Street firms indicated that my plan will in fact create 18.6 million jobs, 7 million more than his. This is from Wall Street. And I'll create $1 trillion more in economic growth than his proposal does. Not on climate, just on the economy.
President Trump, you're
Today came out and said very strongly, $6,500 will be taken away from families under his plan, that his plan is an economic disaster. If you look at what he wants to do, you know,
the last 30
if you look
seconds,
at his environmental plan, you know who developed it? AOC plus 3. They know nothing about the climate. I mean, she's got a good line of stuff, but she knows nothing about the climate. And they're all hopping through hoops for AOC plus 3. Look, their real plan cost $100 billion. If we had the best year in the history of our country for 100 years, we would not even come close to a number like that.
So, like, I think
when he says buildings,
AOC
they want to take buildings
I saw a
down because they
notification
want
like
to make
Jack
bigger
Septic guy
windows
was
into
playing
smaller windows.
Among Us with
As far
AOC,
as
and I
I'm
saw a
concerned,
video
if you
that
had no window, it would be a lovely
what was
thing.
it, Pokemon
This is
Mame
the
or
craziest plan
Pokemon?
that
I don't know how you
anybody
say
has
it,
ever
but I
seen.
think
And this
she
wasn't
played with
done
AOC.
by smart people.
Saw a video
This wasn't
that
done by
it's a Gundam did
anybody.
on it.
Frankly, I don't even know how it could be good politically. They want to spend $100
AOC's
trillion.
now playing on
That's their
Twitch
real
trying to
number.
get
He's trying to say it
people to
was
vote for
6.
Biden.
It's $100
Recruiting?
trillion.
I mean, I don't know.
They want to knock down buildings and
odd,
build
though.
new buildings with little, tiny,
I haven't
small
watched
windows.
it even, so I have no clue what the
and many
context
other
of it
things.
was.
Okay.
And many other things.
Let me have the Vice President
It
respond,
is
and we're running out of
crazy.
time, and we have a lot
And
more
you'll
questions to
destroy
get
our
to.
country.
So let's hear from the Vice President. I have a number more questions.
I don't know where he comes from. I don't know where he comes up with these numbers.
Queens.
$100 trillion. Give me a break. This plan has been endorsed by every major environmental group and every labor group. Labor, because they know the future lies. The future lies in us being able to breathe, and they know there are good jobs in getting us there. And by the way, the fastest growing industry in America is is solar energy and wind. He thinks wind causes cancer, windmills. It's the fastest growing jobs, and they pay good prevailing wages, 45, 50 bucks an hour. We can grow and we can be cleaner if we go the route.
I mean, wind power, from
President
what
Trump,
research I've
please
done,
respond, and then I have some
we are
follow-ups.
energy
fairly low
independent
down
for
on
the
a lot
first
of the
time. We don't need all of these countries that we had to fight war over because we needed their energy. We are energy
clean
independent.
energy, for
I
that
know
matter.
more about wind than you do. It's extremely expensive, kills all the birds, it's very intermittent, it's got a lot of problems, and they happen to make the windmills in both Germany and China, and the fumes coming up, if you're a believer in carbon emission, the fumes coming up to make these massive windmills is more than anything that we're talking about with natural gas, which is very clean. One other thing.
Find me a scientist that said that.
I love solar, but solar doesn't quite have it yet. It's not
Solar,
powerful
yeah,
yet
solar is probably the
to
worst
really run our big,
anyways.
beautiful factories that we need.
But hey, like
to
I said,
compete with the
nuclear
world.
power and hydroelectric
So,
power,
it's all a
those
pipe
are both
dream.
really good.
But you know what we'll do? We're going to have the greatest economy in the world. But if you want to kill the
All right.
economy, get rid of your oil industry. You want, and what about fracking?
All right,
Now
let
we have to ask
let me
about
allow
fracking.
Vice President Biden to
I
respond.
never said I oppose fracking.
You said it on tape.
I did show the tape. Put it on your website.
I'll put it on.
Put it on the website. The fact of the matter is
Showed
he's
it last-
flat lying.
Would you
Flat-
rule out banning fracking?
I do rule out banning fracking because the answer, we need other industries to transition to get to ultimately a complete zero emissions by 2025. What I will do with fracking over time is make sure that we can capture the emissions from the fracking, capture the emissions from gas. We can do that, and we can do that by investing money in doing it, but it's a transition to that.
I have one more question in this pod, and then
Excuse me,
we have.
he was against fracking. He said it. I will show that to you tomorrow. I
Good.
am against fracking. Until he got the nomination, went to Pennsylvania, then he said, but you know what, Pennsylvania? He'll be against it very soon because his party is totally against it.
Fracking on federal land, I said. No fracking
You said
and or oil
fracking. You
on
didn't say
federal
Let
land.
me ask this
I
final
did.
question in this section, and then I want to move on to our final section. President Trump, people of color are much more likely to live near oil refineries and chemical plants. In Texas, there are families who worry the plants near them are making them sick. Your administration has rolled back regulations on these kinds of facilities. Why should these families give you another 4 years in office?
The families that we're talking about are employed heavily, and they're making a lot of money, more money than they've ever made. If you look at the kind of numbers that we produce for Hispanic, for Black, for Asian, it's 9 times greater the percentage gain than it was under, in 3 years, than it was under 8 years of the 2 of them, to put it nicely. 9 times more. Now, somebody lives, I have not heard the numbers or the statistics that you're saying, but they're making a tremendous amount of money economically. We saved it, and I saved it again a number of months ago when oil was crashing because of the pandemic.
Okay.
We saved it. We got, say what you want about relationship, we got Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Russia to cut back, way back. We saved our oil industry, and now it's very vibrant again.
All
And
right.
everybody has very inexpensive gasoline. Remember
Vice
that.
President Biden, your response, and then we're going to have a final question for both of you.
My response is that those people live on what they call fence lines. He doesn't understand this. They live near chemical plants that in fact pollute, chemical plants and oil plants and refineries that pollute. I used to live near that when I was growing up in Claymont, Delaware. And all the more oil refineries in Marcus Hook and the Delaware River than there is any place, including in Houston at the time. When my mom get in the car and when there was first frost to drive me to school, turning the windshield wiper, there'd be oil slick in the window. That's why so many people in my state were dying and getting cancer. The fact is, those frontline communities, it doesn't matter what you're paying them, it matters how you keep them safe. What do you do?
Yes,
And
this
you
is what I'm gonna
impose
say.
restrictions on the
There's good
pollutions
stuff that the
that
Trump
are
administration has
coming
done
out
for
of
the
those fence
environment, but
lines.
there's also some stuff that they haven't been so
Communities.
good at.
Okay, I have
So-
one final
Would he
question.
close
It
down
falls-
the oil industry?
It falls.
That's
Would
why
you close
overall,
down the
I
oil
think
By the way, I
Trump
would
administration
transition from
probably
the oil
like a-
industry, yes.
Oh,
I will
that's a big
transition.
statement.
Probably a
It is
C
a big
plus on-
statement
on the
because
environment.
I would stop
Why would you do that?
because the oil industry pollutes significantly.
Maybe a B
Here's the
minus.
deal, but
That's
you
a
can't
big
do that.
statement.
Well, if you let me finish the statement, because it has to be replaced by renewable energy over time. Over time. and I'd stop giving to the oil industry. I'd stop giving them federal subsidies. He won't give federal subsidies to the gas, excuse me, to solar and wind.
Yeah.
Why are we giving it to oil industry?
We actually do give it to solar and wind. And that's maybe the biggest statement in terms of business. That's the biggest statement.
Okay.
Because basically what he's saying is he is going to destroy the oil industry. Will you remember that, Texas? Will you remember that, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma?
Vice President Biden, let me give you 10 seconds to respond, and then I have to get to the final question. Vice President Biden.
He takes everything out of context, but the point is, look, we have to move toward a net zero emissions. The first place to do that by the year 2035 is in energy production, by 2050 totally.
All right. One final question.
Is he going to get China to do it?
No, we're finished with this.
Is he going to get China to do it?
We have to move on to our final question. We have to move on
That's
to
what I
our final
think. If
question.
you're just wanting to make
China abide by
the environment in this country better,
This is
then I'm all
about
for it. But if
leadership, gentlemen.
the motivation is just to try to like stop global warming, it's like I think that motivation is misplaced.
Imagine
Because like
this is
unless
your
you get other
inauguration
countries
day.
on board, it's
What
never
will
gonna
you
happen.
say in your address to Americans who did not vote for you? You'll each have
I'm
1
not
minute,
even
starting
convinced
with
that
you, Mr.
We have to make
climate
a
changing
country
like this will have
totally
the
successful
kind of
as
effect
it
they
was
say it's
prior to
gonna
the plague
have.
coming in from China. Now we're rebuilding it, and we're doing record numbers, 11.4 million jobs in a short period of time, etc. But I will tell you, go back. Before the plague came in, just before, I was getting calls from people that were not normally people that would call me. They wanted to get together. We had the best black unemployment numbers in the history of our country. Hispanic, women, Asian, people with diplomas, with no diplomas, MIT graduates, #1 in the class. Everybody had the best numbers. And you know what? The other side wanted to get together. They wanted to unify. Success is going to bring us together. We are on the road to success. But I'm cutting taxes, and he wants to raise everybody's taxes, and he wants to put new regulations on everything. He will kill it. If he gets in, you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen. Your 401ks will go to hell, and it'll be a very, very sad day for this country.
All right. Vice President Biden, same question to you. What will you say during your inaugural address to Americans who did not vote for you?
I will say, I'm an American president.
I don't know if
I
it'll quite
represent
be as
all
bad
of
as what
you,
he's
whether you
saying, but
voted
it
for me or against me.
wouldn't be good.
And I'm going to make sure that you're represented. I'm going to give you hope. We're going to move. We're going to choose science over fiction. We're going to choose hope over fear. We're going to choose to move forward because we have enormous opportunities.
So here's my thing. I think most people, even that are sort of on the fence, are still going to vote for Trump or just not vote at all. But if they do vote for somebody and they're still sort of on the fence, they'll probably vote for Trump. Because like you know what to expect with Trump, you know.
Moved and motivated by clean
With Biden,
energy,
there's too many
creating
variables.
millions of new jobs. And
It's
that's
like,
the fact.
if
That's
what
we're
he
gonna do.
said he was
And
going
I'm
to
gonna
do, if
say,
that like
as
that
I said
was
in the
like
beginning,
it, and he
what
wasn't going
is
to be
on the
influenced by the
ballot
rest of the
here is
Democratic
the
Party,
character
then
of this country. Decency,
probably wouldn't be too
honor,
bad.
respect,
But
treating people with dignity, making sure that everyone has an even chance.
if that's what he really
And I'm
wants to
gonna
do,
make sure
that's
you get
one
that.
question. And then
You
the
haven't
thing
been
is,
in the last
regardless
4
of
years.
what the
All
answer is
right,
to
I
that,
wanna
the rest of
thank
the
you
Democratic
both for a
Party is
very
more
robust
radical, and they're
hour and a
moving
half.
in a more radical
Fantastic
direction.
debate. Really appreciate
most
it.
part.
President Trump, former Vice President
So they're
Joe
gonna be the
Biden,
ones
thank you to
that
Belmont University for hosting us
end
tonight.
up,
And most importantly,
the ones that end
thank
up
you to those watching tonight.
probably
Election
making a lot of the
Day is
policy
November
decisions.
3rd. Don't forget to vote. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.
Thank you.
All right. I don't know, like I said, I wish I kept up on more of the issues I could respond to. This is not very good analysis. This is probably the worst of all these videos I've done in terms of my analysis of the debate and reactions to certain stuff. Wasn't a disaster like the first one, but I don't think either candidate performed like exceptionally well or exceptionally bad. I think they both just performed decently. I guess I'll say this. I mean, it's going to be a close election. Like I've been saying for months now. Probably first started saying this probably 4, maybe 5 months ago. I think that Trump is going to win, but I think it's going to be by a much narrower margin than the previous one. So I do think Biden probably will win the popular vote. I could be wrong about this. I mean, some of the polls and whatever that are coming up now are actually seeming to show that like Trump's going to win. But I think that Trump's going to win the Electoral College again, but it's going to be a very narrow margin. So even if I'm wrong and it's not narrower than the previous election, like I am like for sure convinced it's going to be very narrow. Like the popular vote's probably going to be within probably within about 200,000 votes, maybe even less than that. I mean, it's probably actually going to be within. I think it'll be within 100,000 votes, regardless of who wins. But it's certainly, I think, going to be within 1 percentage point in terms of the popular vote, at the very least. I mean, it could even go with popular vote in Trump's favor too, but I think he will win the Electoral College again, which is what matters. So here's the thing: if Biden does get elected, my stance on, and I may end up streaming some of like on election night when the votes are coming in and all that stuff, and they're getting ready to declare a winner. I may stream something on that, my reactions, but probably not, because I don't know if I'm going to have all that much to say. Plus, at the moment I'm working a night shift. I'm going to be going to work at 9 p.m. tonight, so in an hour from now, and that'll be the end of my first week. I'm going to be working it for 2 more weeks after this, and then I'm going to be going back to a normal daytime shift at my job. So I probably won't have, since that's still going to fall within the election, when the election happens, I'd only have between, like up to 9 o'clock to do it, and I don't think anything's going to be final by 9 o'clock, considering how close it is. I'll say this much though: whoever loses, guaranteed, is going to demand a recount. Like they're going to want to try to contest it. I think though that if Trump does lose, I don't think the public response, any kind of like riot. Well, I don't even know if there'll be much riots. There could be, but I mean, here's the thing. I mean, I think there certainly would probably be protests, but I don't know about riots. But even if there would be riots from some right-wing groups, then I would expect that they would get shut down rather quickly. Red state, blue state, doesn't matter. They should be shut down quickly and effectively. If Trump wins again, though, there's for sure going to be... I don't know if it'll be quite as bad as this when Clinton was elected, because I think people's outrage is that they kind of like let off some steam back then, and like they're still upset, but they're probably not going to react as extremely. But who knows? It could be that some will act just as extremely or more extreme, because they may be more convinced that America is this terrible place that they think it is, and they may even look at it and be like, hey, Biden's even a more moderate candidate than Clinton, which I don't know if he really was, to be honest. I think Biden and Hillary are probably in the same. If anything, I think Biden might be even more progressive than Hillary. The thing is, he's just not as corrupt as Hillary was. So that's the big problem with Hillary. It's like she was like one of the most corrupt politicians out there. So yeah, in terms of overall analysis of this debate, like I said, I don't think that. I will say, as far as the moderator goes, moderator slightly biased for Biden, but overall not too bad. I think she pushed both of them on some important questions. But yeah, in terms of like the actual debates, including the VP debate, so the first presidential debate, this second and final one, and the VP debate, I think Chris Wallace actually did. So I would not have expected this, but Chris Wallace, I think, did the worst out of all of them. And the reason why, especially at the town hall, though, like George Stephanopoulos with Biden, he did kind of push Biden and stuff, but like there was never really any super, like if he was questioning Trump, like when he questions Trump in Trump's town hall that he had about a week or two before the first debate, his bias was on full display there. It didn't come through quite as much in the Biden town hall thing, but it was still there. But especially in Trump's town hall, where I don't know what the lady's name was, but I'm trying to think. The way she was very hostile towards Trump. The first 2 or 3 questions were just dragging up stuff, just basically like wasting time. Like they were attacking Trump. They were really brutal towards Trump, and they were like not really substantial questions. They were just like wasting time, so like Trump couldn't talk about the more important issues in my estimation. So, but this debate was actually moderated fairly well. I do like the idea of having the mic muted there. I think that helped out a lot. But I think even in the portion afterwards, they both did a good job at not interrupting each other much. So that was, I like that. But very interesting. Well, not so interesting here, but like the whole situation that we're in is going to be interesting to see how it plays out. So I got my ballot, in Washington. We do mail-in voting, so just gonna go drop it off at the courthouse when I finish voting. But I'll probably vote in the next. I was thinking about doing some voting before this, but I still have to read up. I haven't read up on all the other, candidates for the different seats or whatever. So, and I'm thorough when I read it. So, the whole voting process for me, I opened up the pamphlet. I do tiny bits of additional research, but mostly I rely on whatever I've heard already, and then just read whatever kind of arguments they like, especially when it comes to different propositions or whatever, like arguments for and against and the rebuttals. I'll read that, and then when it comes to particular like House seats or the governor or whatever, I'll just basically read. If I don't know much about them, usually I'll just read what they have in that pamphlet, and then base it. I basically just say, hey, who can make the stronger argument for themselves and against their opponent, and then I'll basically vote, and who would be more in line with what policies I would like to see put in place. And then when you kind of combine those two, I basically formulate some sort of an average, and whoever I think is the better candidate in that case, then that's who I vote for. But I am thorough about it. I read it. I don't just like vote Republican down the ticket, even though I generally vote for the vast majority are Republican, but most of, I usually vote for a couple of libertarian things, although a lot of times they're running in seats that are uncontested. But I have in the past, two times I've voted. I don't think I voted in the last local election things or state election thing that we had, but I voted during the 2016 election and during the midterm election in 2018. So, but I think it was during the year of the presidential election, I did actually vote for two or three Democratic candidates. But vast majority of my votes go for Republicans, just because I'm kind of a conservative who leans libertarian on some issues. But yeah, that's the dealio. So I think I'm just going to wrap it up here. Not super insightful analysis here, but again, I guess I'll close it by saying I'm looking forward to the next election cycle even more so, where hopefully both parties will be able to run candidates that they can feel proud of voting for, and hopefully both of them will be presidential. And it'd be amazing if even the next Democratic candidate, I could be like, whoever wins, and I'm not super dissatisfied with Trump. I think Trump's done a great job for the most part. But if I could be, I don't see this happening exactly, but if it could be the Democrat or the Republican that wins, and I could be like, you know what, no matter who wins, I'm confident they'll do a better job than whoever wins this next election. For me to be able, that would be amazing to be able to say. Just as a country, everybody should be happy about that, because it means we're moving in a positive direction. But I don't think that's really realistic with the way things are going. But if it would happen, that would be an absolute miracle, and it would be such an amazing thing to see. So, on that note, thank you guys for watching. And who knows what the next video on this channel is going to be. Probably will be something not political, but it might be a political thing anyway. Like I said, I probably won't stream that election thing. So, all right. Have a good one, everyone.